Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming to the Festival Shed, our new venue this year at our festival hub, or our Garden of Light, how we dubbed it, because of the beautiful artwork by Regina Silvera that she created that plays with light and plays with the word light. Welcome to our third talk today. I have some good news, some bad news, and some great news. The great news is Charlotte Rampling is here. The bad news is that Sarah Lyall, who the New York Times journalist, had a last-minute emergency and could not make it to Toronto. The good news is that the wonderful Toronto Star writer, entertainment writer Richard Ozunian is sort of stepped out of his Father's Day duties or celebrations, basically. He basically now is missing out on being pampered by his kids to interview Charlotte Rampling, but I actually very much understand why he accepted, because it is a great pleasure to have Charlotte Rampling with us and to interview her, or I hope it will be. And before I invite them up on stage, I would like to say thank you to our wonderful volunteers, everyone in the green t-shirts. They are really, I think we have over 500 of them this year, and they're really the oil in the engine of the festival. If you have a question, ask them anything. They can give you brochures. The festival is continuing until the 28th of June. I hope you are going to come to many other events. I think there's still some wonderful things in store for you. And I also want to thank Oxford Properties and Roy Thompson Hall for letting us be here and set up camp on their property. And thank you to the founding government partner, the province of Ontario, our major partner, the Government of Canada and L'Oréal Canada, and our presenting partners, the City of Toronto and CIBC. And I would like to invite up on stage now Richard Ozunian and Charlotte Rampling.
It's a little bright, yeah. Life throws you curveballs. About 24 hours ago, I just finished seeing Ms. Rampling do an astonishing performance. And I thought, gee, I wish I could thank her in person. I got a phone call this afternoon, and here I am. And let me begin by saying, Charlotte Rampling, thank you, and thanks, Sonia, for an astonishing night in the theater.
Thank you.
Can I just hear a show of hands? How many of you were at the performance? Great. So I don't want to dwell too much on it, because nothing's worse than being told about a party you weren't invited to. But Charlotte, one of the things that was most astonishing about this mixture of cello and Sylvia Plath was the way that the music and the text kind of danced around each other, sometimes together, sometimes separate. How did you two evolve that?
I think that's what we really, really wanted, was to be able to give voice to the two different voices, that each, the instrument and the human voice could actually almost be one and the same thing, that they could almost be giving the same kind of quality of sound and intention. And I think that has been talked about quite often, that we managed to get that kind of, we managed to get that. So it means that you have succeeded somewhere along the line of what you dreamed of doing actually does happen.
Great. The poetry of Sylvia Plath, not an easy thing to immerse oneself in as thoroughly as you do. How do you approach that every time you have to go back and go through that, I would imagine, painful experience of those poems?
I like things to be very, very difficult. I like things to be really difficult in a sense where it's really going to make me work. It's really going to make me go somewhere maybe where it scratches and itches and hurts and also makes you laugh and all the stuff. But really, I've always searched for those types of challenges in all the work that I've done. And Sylvia Plath's poetry is like I mean, I could have written it in another life, I always think. I think she became very much my voice. It's very much about, there's a brutality, there's a savagery, there's a desolation, there's a extreme humor, there's a kaleidoscope of an emotional world that I really identify with.
There are so many things in your life that mirror slightly or heavily Sylvia's life, but the major difference is that you're sitting here today and you are very much not just a survivor, but a thriver. You have embraced life and done very well with life. Where do you feel you and Plath parted? That you chose life and activity and she chose death?
Oh. How do you know? Really? I mean, I think we die along the way a few times. We go that far, but some of us don't actually die. But we get very, very, very near it. And I think that's also the excitement, because that makes us, it's probably the only moment we really feel alive is when we almost, just overdo it and just feel that we could flip the other way. And I think a lot of people do in their lives search for that. I mean, people take drugs for that. People do exceedingly dangerous, odd, bad things too for that, to get that feeling of actually absolutely being alive.
Some of the more extreme and dramatic works you've done, have they been your way of testing that and saying, I'm really alive, I'm going to go this far and try this?
I don't know. I don't consider it very brave what I do. I don't consider it very out of the ordinary what I do. I do it because I have to do it. That's the way I have to proceed in life. I have to put certain things in my way, in my path. I have to, when I say I like to make things difficult, I know that if I don't make them difficult, I just won't go out the door. I'll just sort of sit and say, oh, no, I think I'll just stay at home today, So if it has to be, I have to literally really push myself to get out there. And once I'm out there, I'll do anything it takes to do what I will do out there. Do you see what I mean? It's the getting out there. I think probably a lot of people can identify with that. The risk-taking is what is essential in my life. I have to take those risks in order to, not only just to feel alive, but in order to actually be able to do something. I mean, like doing the Sylvia Plath performance, when I do it, I know that I really go right out there on a limb, but that's what makes me who I am, and that's what makes me continue. Mm.
That's a very good point, but when you began your career, I'm trying to think, except for Georgie Girl, which was a more commercial movie, right away you started plunging into other things that were very difficult, like The Damned. Now, were you already at that point where you had to push yourself through an extreme experience to get to work, that young?
I was on that path because something happened in my life when I was young that put me on that path. And I think if you go back to what happens with life and death, someone in my family died. So at age 20, I was confronted with a lot of questioning about, well, not even questioning, you don't actually quite know how you're going to relate to what happens when it's somebody close. And I did not want to make fun films after that. I didn't want to make entertaining films. I just didn't think that I actually was allowed to. I thought that it was inappropriate. I thought that, I wanted to start to search further into what makes people do what they want, what they do, what made my sister do what she did, for example, and that sort of thing. It's like you go, I think big events obviously define your life, and then you go on a quest to actually understand what your next move or path is going to be. You start questing. I use questing because I think it's a good sort of word, and it's quite a romantic word too. It means that you're going to go on a particular journey because something has happened. You're not just going to sort of be moseying along with everybody else, but you are going to go on a chosen journey. You're going to make yourself go on that chosen journey.
What was your chosen journey? To discover what happened to your sister, or to see that it wouldn't happen to you, or
no,
what?
No, you don't know. You're not allowed to know, but you must go on the journey. That's what you've got to do. But you never know what'll happen on the journey, but you've got to get on that road and be on the journey. Yeah.
One of the things in your life during this period, and I don't mean to dwell on one incident too long, but when your sister died, within your family, it was kept from your mother, I believe.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. So we'll go into the movies then, all right? 2 movies with Nazi backgrounds early on in your career that kind of defined you in many people's eyes, and they still have the pin-up pictures of you from The Night Porter, in particular, after all these... See, they have them out there, I know it.
You hear that laugh?
We are all guilty, thank you. But, again, it must have been coincidence that The Damned and The Night Porter came along, or was it? Did you choose them for a reason? Or?
Coincidences, what are they? Is that sort of... I don't quite know what coincidences are. It just so happens that things happen, and you are either put in front of the possibility of being able to have a choice, and so you can choose 1 or 2 or 3 of them, or you can't choose. You just have to take one because that's all that's being offered. Do you know what I mean? From an actor's life, it's very much, I think, that, or perhaps in other people's lives too. And then until you can start to branch out and really be able to understand what decision making and choice making can be, because you can play the field, because there is a field out there. You are wanted. You have actually been seen and heard, so you have choice.
That's a great point. In The Night Porter, did you feel you were exploring the limits of what your character could do, or what you could do, or what the audience could accept, or all 3?
Well, you don't know what the audience will accept, do you? And at that time you didn't, because it was the first time that this particular subject was starting to be opened up, as was The Damned. We hadn't really had to wait at least 20 years after the Second World War before things started to be exposed. And what was your question?
Well, it was, I guess, how far...
These talks are really, because you said you started to go on a trip and a journey, that you were on, and then you...
Yeah, come back to that.
Yes, all right, can we come back?
I guess it was, how much of it was a testing of your limits, or or the character's limits,
yeah.
or both?
I did The Night Porter because Dirk Bogarde wanted me in The Night Porter. We'd worked together in The Damned, the other right. Nazi film. And he had the script of The Night Porter for about 3 years before, and he hadn't wanted to do it. He just didn't want to go there. It was too tough, and they hadn't found the girl either. And so it was dropped for a while. And when he met me and we worked together on The Damned, he knew that he'd found the girl. I didn't know this at that time. I knew it a bit later, when he sent me the script and said, "Would you read this and just tell me what you think? Because if you want to do it, and we will do it together." And that's how it happened.
So this is what intrigues me. When you did get the script, what made you say, "I will do this"?
Because I thought it was one of the most extraordinary stories I'd ever read about that particular subject, which I didn't know that much about. I think we can safely say we were quite ignorant, most of us, about that particular period. At that time, I was 22 or 23, and I sort of couldn't believe that this could actually happen. It was a true story.
Did you ever feel, when in some of the films you're doing, and starting with that one, that you were deliberately looking into the face of evil, or looking to see how deep into evil you could gaze?
Whoa, that's some question. Whoa.
Well, you didn't want the easy ones, did you?
No, I didn't. Of course, I've announced myself wanting only difficulties. To show you, I really do like a good laugh too.
Yes.
So just say it again, Richard. Just give me the thing
Well,
about,
okay.
about evil
how
again.
Far,
because
how
it's
far
really-
were you testing how far into evil one could gaze, or one could go as a performer, as a person?
I don't know how to really answer that. What I felt that I was making, when I was making Night Porter, what I felt I was making as a film, I thought I was making a love story, obviously in a really bizarre setting, but not so bizarre because it had actually existed, so we could actually, we're not sort of inventing some kind of bizarrerie. These things had actually been happening. And at that age, anyway, you think you're not quite sure how much of all these weird things can happen. As you get along older, you realize there's an awful lot of them. But at that stage, I thought it was. I just thought it was visually and emotionally just. It's so charged. I didn't think about the evil because I thought that it was a love story. I said to Dirk, this has to be a love story. And in fact, Liliana Cavani, the director, wanted it to be more obscure, more intellectual, more of an analysis about Nazi guilt than a love story. And so we sort of pushed it in that area, and because we all became very close with Liliana, and eventually we made the film, the three of us, with eventually, she obviously had the final edit, but what we actually did and the stuff we shot was, a lot of it wasn't on the page, it was just what we felt should be in there.
Let me go to a slightly lighter topic. You've also done a lot of work in photography, being a model. What has that experience been like for you? Is it more reflective, or when someone says, will you let me do photos of you, as opposed to will you play a character?
Well, it sort of has to go together in a way. With me it did. And it started to become very coherent when I met Helmut Newton, the photographer. And he hadn't really gone into the photography that we know him now for, a lot of amazingly powerful nude photography, and he was more of a fashion photographer at the time. And the first nude I did with him at the Norpinus Hotel in Arles, because I was making a film there, and he'd come to do a fashion shoot with me, and said, would you like to try and do some news, because there's this fantastic room in this hotel? And I said, yeah, why not? I was sort of, I didn't mind. I thought I was liking difficult things. I thought this is going to be, maybe interesting to do. Anyway, it turned out that the image that he created of me naked on that table, which is a very well-known photograph now, was exactly the image that I recognized that I wanted to how would I say it? Because you don't, in the 1970s, we weren't sort of so image conscious as we are now, but we were still, it was like the woman I saw sitting on that table, and the kind of insolence that's in my face, and just the mood around that he was created in that room where all the toreadors were dressed before they could go into the bullfighting ring. I said, that's the woman, that's the girl that I want to be. And it was me.
Was that?
But I didn't know that I looked like that. Because you don't until you're revealed by a great photographer.
Right.
You don't actually know what you look like or what you can look like. And if you're photogenic, which I am, but I mean films have done it in a different way. But this was, I thought, this is, yeah, that's it. So so to answer your question in a rather long-winded way, was that the photography I did from then on needed to correspond to that kind of woman. It needed to be, I needed to be that kind of woman in still photography, otherwise it didn't work.
Is that where the phrase that's often used in conjunction with you, the look, did it come from there or earlier?
I think it started to come from there, yeah. From those moments where you just, it's like, you catch it. It's like a sort of a cat. You actually get it, and you're looking, and the camera can catch that. The still camera can catch that in a very arresting way, because it is stopped. You are freezing the image. You're freezing that moment. So if you have the two, and you have a person like myself who can do the still and the moving image. It's interesting.
Do you recall what you were thinking about or what passed through your mind during that shoot that played on your face that made that moment?
No, because it was very innocent, you know. It's not, there was nothing programmed. He just said, go and sit on the table and look at me. So you go and sit on the table. And I looked at him.
And that was it?
Yeah, that was it. I promise you, it really was that.
Well, it's like...
It gets more complicated later on, but that was at the beginning, it was like that.
They often say the famous last scene of Queen Christiana where Greta Garbo is staring, everyone thinks it's so wonderful, and she said, I was told to look at the camera and think of nothing and count to 25. That was it. How come later in your life you decided to make a documentary about you called The Look?
Well, I didn't decide to do that because I wouldn't have really dared to even think about it. I don't do that sort of thing.
How did it happen then?
So it happened it was a German producer who wrote to me and said that he really wanted me to do something with me. And I said, I don't want to do a documentary because I don't want to use the format of a documentary, of having people to go around and ask other people what they think of working with me or this, that, and the other. Not that I was worried that anyone was going to say anything, but it wasn't even that, because I don't mind what people say about me. Everyone has their opinion, but I don't like that format.
Right.
So we finally devised the format of actually conversations. And I thought that's more interesting. So I'm actually having a conversation with you, and someone is filming it. Someone actually is filming it, you see.
There you go.
But this was a bit more arty.
Yes.
No. And cinema. And so somehow you take the curse off about it being about me, although it is all about me because I'm the one that's sort of talking and having the documentary bend about it. But it's not cameras saying to other people, and yes, and Charlotte Rampling, and rather like, you know, rather like you're doing now. No, you're not doing that now. No, you're not.
Okay.
No, you're not, Richard.
I feel a little better.
But and so I thought, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you now why. Really, really, why I did it was because I sort of wanted, before I, go wherever I have to go, where we all go when we're not here. Well, not in Toronto, but generally. I just wanted to have people listen to me, rather like you're listening to me in a way. I just wanted to have people could just hear in. Have a listen in to a conversation of an artist, just talking about different subjects, not about themselves, but about their work, about life, about heartache, about love, about death, about exposure, we had different chapters, and just chatting about them. So it's not so ego-orientated, it's about other things. And then you bring in the clips of films that correspond to the particular subject you're talking about.
Did you discover anything about yourself in that process?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah. Next question.
You won't share with us what it was. No. Okay, she's not going to share it. We're going to move to questions very shortly from the audience, but I did want to ask a bit, because for some people, they may have been surprised to see you pop up in this kind of thing recently. When you did Dexter, and you were in the last season as his therapist, and if you haven't seen your old copies of it yet, we won't give away what happens. But what is it like to move into a family that's been there for 7 years or 7 seasons, and you come along, but it's suddenly like you're the long-lost aunt who's very much a member of the family right now?
Well, yeah, the character was very much a member of the family, actually, well, without them knowing it.
Right.
No. I don't know. It was just a sort of rather interesting challenge, that whole thing. Because I got a call, and I literally had to be there in a month, sort of 3 weeks later. So I had to really make my mind up very quickly. And I had done a series once, way back, and been part of it, but I hadn't done not all those episodes. I hadn't done like 10 episodes in a series. It was just the right time. Like, again, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to do.
Good. Does it feel at all bizarre to have everybody having known each other so long and worked together so long and played characters for 7 years, and then you enter?
I don't know, you adapt to absolutely everything in this business. Being an actor especially, you just literally have to infiltrate everywhere and just not be fazed by it all. And if you are fazed by it, it's only you that's going to be fazed, no one else is going to be fazed, so you're going to have to sit with your phase. So if you have to, you know, you literally have to just infiltrate any country, any language, any part, and just sort of be part of it. It's actually, that's very much what our business is about, so that's not problematic.
Good. I have one more thing I want to ask you. I'm going to save till the very end, and we'll see first if the people have any questions out here. There's microphones, I believe, on both sides of the stage. You have to go to the microphone, please, to ask the question, okay? Because they want to have them recorded. So if you do have any requests, line up at the mic, okay? Ma'am.
Wonderful performance. I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite movie role in which you feel you did your best work?
Not one, no. I don't think, not one film.
What are the many?
Well, I don't know whether you saw a film called Max, My Love, which is me and a chimpanzee. Yeah. Me and a chimpanzee, yeah? I don't know whether you did that. Well, anyway, if you can get hold of that, have a look, because I actually thought that was something special. There was another film also, which is a very quiet film but very powerful, called Under the Sand. And I thought that was, I got very close to something which to me was the essential of what I really want to, how I want to express myself in film. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Hi. I have a question here. So you have been in more than 100 projects, and I wonder, before you get the script to read the character like you play, I wonder what kind of character, like personality you're looking for in the person, or I mean, in the character you're about to portray. Thank you.
I think the character has to have something that is intrinsically about the complexities that I feel inside myself, because those are the ones that live with me and therefore interest me, and therefore I know that I can know that I can use. I really can use well, and I don't like to go too far away from that, because I don't want the character to be too very, very different, because it doesn't really interest me. I haven't got time to develop too much outside myself, because what happens inside my inner life is what I feel is important in cinema, is what comes through the resonance of what I can actually make people feel through the intensity of my own inner life. So that inner life needs to be able to join, so to speak, another character. So, but it needs to be quite close. Does that answer you?
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I just want to say it's wonderful seeing you. And my question is in regards to, over your career, you've been very, very popular, primarily in France. And I just wanted to understand why you're so taken in that region and not in other locations, for example, in America. I went to Paris once and I mentioned your name and they said, "Ah, le Legende." And I want to know why you're so revered and why they've been so taken with you in France.
Anybody from France here? It's your time to speak. What can I say? I wanted to make continental films. I wanted to make European films. I wanted to be a European. I left England and began working in Italy. Made some very extraordinary films there. And then France came along, and France was through mon cœur, because I married a Frenchman and we stayed in France. And then French films were very interesting also at that time in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And it's a question of choice also. I mean, I'd been to America, I'd done things in America, but I'm not American. The kind of films I was getting offered in America didn't really suit my personality, and so there wasn't too much hardship in the choice. It was the, let's say, the independent art house cinéma d'auteur circuit was what fascinated me, because I knew that was the place I should be.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Questions out in the audience? Okay. Yes, sir, do you mind coming to the microphone? Thank you.
Having done such iconic films as you have in the past, what is your sense of the state of cinema in Europe today?
Well, I'm still here. If anyone wants to ask me to do a film, I can do it. Maybe if it suits me. No, I'm being not flip, but it's really not a question I can answer.
Well,
You know.
I guess what I was wondering is there were some pretty amazing periods in Europe through, the 20th century in terms of filmmakers and filmmaking. Do you think that birthright continues? Do you think, France and Italy continues to spawn interesting directors? And does the system allow it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course it does. But everything is very different. Every decade changes our whole world so much. Every sort of 5 years now it seems to heave up and heave down, huge changes. So cinema is a reflection of life. Cinema describes actually what we're all going through, more than we can possibly imagine, I think. And so it's going to go through ups and downs and rocky times, but it's always going to be there, because we need this mirror. We need images and storytelling as mirrors to understand who we are and what we are doing, and why, perhaps a little bit why we're doing it. But the scale and scope and the style and the genre and the way it's done are obviously going to evolve and change, because we never stay still for a second. We're always constantly in a state of evolution and movement. So it's going to change and be different. I mean, our kids now are going to live a different life than I did, and et cetera, but we're still all alive. We still all need certain basic things, and one of them is we need to have things to watch.
Thank you. That was well answered.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Charlotte. Actually, for the French question, or the answer, I thought you were going to say it all started in Fontainebleau way back in your childhood, but maybe you cut off from that. I just wanted to say, in relation to your most recent roles, I mean, you've had some fantastic roles, at least from the point of view of the audience looking at you, in the last sort of 5 years, when typically one hears that it's more and more difficult to find exciting roles for women in the cinema. Do you think, are you chasing after any roles, or are those ones still coming to find you?
No, I think we find each other. I think all along the way I seem to have found things because they found me. I haven't been out. I'm not a very good either businesswoman or career woman, or it hasn't really interested me. It hasn't been part of the way I am. So along the way, either with meetings in friendships or in partnerships or in love relationships, things have just sort of come together. It sounds rather sort of hippie talk, but it's not. It's actually we all decide somewhere deep down, without even knowing it, what kind of life we're going to lead, because that's what we're made up of. That's what's in our genes, that's what's in our DNA. We are who we are, and we can't change that. And if we try and change it, things keep going wrong. But if we sort of think, if we're able to understand that concept and actually sort of sit inside that concept and say, well, we are a certain type of person. We can't be like this person, we can't be like this person, but we are who we are, and as individuals, unique, because we're all completely unique, then somehow, things have happened to me because of who I am.
Very good. Yes.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming and joining us. And my father really wanted to be here today and couldn't, so I think his Father's Day is ruined. But I'm just thinking you've had such a long and illustrious career spanning so many years, and you've always found, as you've said, roles that have spoken to you and that have interested you. And do you find today, maybe looking at Hollywood culture, blockbusters, most recently Jurassic World, a movie that I saw, do you look at those kind of movies and still see roles that interest you and that speak to you, or do you feel that it's a different maybe type of cinematic culture?
Yeah, it's good to have all types of cinematic culture, really, for all types of people. As I said, we're all very different, and we all seek different forms of entertainment and different stimulus and different. This is why when over the years, or over the last sort of 20, 30 years, sort of independent cinema was very threatened. Is it going to still be? Because independent cinema, what is it? Or cinema d'auteur, what is it? It's the voice of a person actually talking about us, ourselves, how we are in the world, socially speaking, and about how we actually intertwine socially amongst each other. But then on the other hand, it's great to have, very good entertainment. Hollywood really turns out sometimes very, very good entertainment. But I can't really, although I remember when my sons were little, they were just desperate because I was making all these arty-farty films, and they wanted me to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, or I don't know what, but I mean, and I can understand, but it wasn't quite meant to be.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. One last question over there.
Watching your career, I've always felt it's really been defined by inhabiting a series of really extraordinary roles to incredible depth, but all cinematic roles. And what really struck me about last night was what incredible intensity you gave to those Sylvia Plath poems in that theatrical space. And it made me wonder, is it a conscious decision that you've focused so much of your career on cinema rather than live theatre?
Yeah, circumstances again, timing, things that happened and I couldn't do it, or I had the children, or somebody, or something. I was always thought that theatre I would do later. And it so happens that I am doing it later, and I can see why it works. I can see what I can give to theatre now that I wasn't ready to give perhaps earlier on. I didn't like the idea of being in a box. I didn't like the idea of actually being contained in a space like you have to be in theatre and doing things over and over again. I just wanted to be freer. I wanted to be wilder, I think. That's what was happening. And now, with what I'm doing with Sonia, with the Plath, it means that we can travel around the world and just do it a few times and then move on and do it in other theatres and in other places, which to me is the essence of what theatre should be, in a troubadour sense. You're there with Sonia and her cello, me and just my words, and we can go, and then we just have our lighting, the guy that does all the lighting design for our show, and we just can travel and just be travelling artists.
Thank you. Charlotte, one last question. You touched on this when you said we are what we are, it's in our DNA. What do you believe happens after this?
Well, I think you're going to go and have a cup of tea or a drink, aren't you?
Thank you. Thank you all.